There is a paradox at the heart of trading that few dare to confront directly, and it is this. The very person standing between you and consistent profitability is not the market, not the institution with superior technology, not the algorithm that processes information faster than your synapses can fire. It is you. More specifically, it is a version of you that operates beneath the surface of conscious awareness, a shadow self that emerges precisely when the stakes are highest, when capital is on the line, when your identity as a trader hangs in the balance. This phenomenon, which we might call self-sabotage, is not merely a collection of bad habits or a lack of discipline, as the superficial literature would have you believe. It is something far more insidious, far more deeply rooted in the architecture of human psychology, and understanding it requires us to descend into the darker territories of the mind where rationality gives way to ancient survival mechanisms and where your conscious intentions become hostages to unconscious imperatives you never agreed to. Follow. Self-sabotage in trading manifests in patterns so consistent, so predictable, that they might as well be written into the genetic code of the aspiring trader. You know these patterns intimately because you have lived them. The profitable trade you exit too early, moments before it reaches your target, only to watch in silent anguish as it continues in your favor. The stop loss. You move further away as price approaches it, telling yourself you need to give the trade more room, knowing even as you do it that you are violating your own rules. The revenge trade you take immediately after a loss, not because you have identified a high probability setup, but because something inside you cannot tolerate the psychological discomfort of being wrong. The overtrading that occurs not when opportunities are abundant, but when you are desperate to recover losses, or when you are intoxicated by recent wins. The systematic violation of your trading plan on the very days you promised yourself you would adhere to it with absolute fidelity. These are not random errors. They are not the result of insufficient education or inadequate technical analysis. They are the behavioral signatures of a mind at war with itself. And until you understand the nature of this internal conflict, you will remain trapped in cycles of promise and disappointment, of progress and regression, of clarity and confusion. To understand self-sabotage, we must first acknowledge a fundamental truth about human psychology that most traders actively resist. You are not one unified self with consistent goals and values. You are, in the most neurologically accurate sense, a collection of competing systems, each with its own priorities, its own definition of success, its own methods of commandeering your behavior. The prefrontal cortex, that most recent evolutionary addition to your brain, houses your capacity for long-term planning, rational analysis, and delayed gratification. This is the part of you that creates trading plans, that understands probability, that knows intellectually that one trade is statistically meaningless in the context of 1,000 trades. But beneath this rational veneer lies the limbic system, an ancient structure whose sole concern is immediate survival, whose time horizon extends only to the present moment, whose language is emotion rather than logic. When you place a trade and watch price move against you, it is not your rational mind that floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline. It is not your prefrontal cortex that interprets a paper loss as a threat to your existence. It is this older, more primitive system, and it does not care about your trading plan. It cares about eliminating the discomfort you are experiencing right now, in this moment, by any means necessary. The conflict between these systems creates what we might call the trader's dilemma. Your rational mind understands that losses are part of the statistical distribution of outcomes, that a stop-loss hit is simply the market providing you with information, that emotional decisions made under duress are almost universally poor decisions. But your limbic system experiences a losing trade as a threat, and it responds the way evolution has programmed it to respond to threats, with urgency, with emotion, with an overwhelming compulsion to act. This is why you violate your rules, not because you are weak-willed or undisciplined, but because in the moment of violation, a different part of your brain has seized control, and from its perspective, breaking your rules is the rational thing to do because it terminates the immediate discomfort. The revenge trade feels necessary. Moving the stop-loss feels prudent. Exiting early feels like wisdom. These are not failures of discipline. They are hostile takeovers by a part of your mind that operates according to a completely different logic than the one you used when you created your trading plan in a state of calm neutrality. But there is a deeper layer to self-sabotage that extends beyond the neuroscience of competing brain systems, and it resides in the realm of identity and unconscious belief. Every human being carries within them a self-concept, a narrative about who they are, what they deserve, what is possible for them. This self-concept was not consciously chosen. It was assembled piece by piece through years of experience, through the messages you received from parents and teachers and peers, through your successes and failures, through the conclusions you drew about yourself during your most vulnerable developmental years. And here is the uncomfortable truth that most traders never confront. If your unconscious self-concept includes the belief that you are not the kind of person who succeeds, not the kind of person who deserves wealth, not the kind of person capable of mastering something as difficult as trading, then every action you take will unconsciously align with that belief. Your unconscious mind will ensure that your external reality matches your internal identity, even if that means sabotaging your own success. This is why traders often experience what appears to be a ceiling on their performance. They reach a certain level of profitability, perhaps they have their first significantly winning month, and then, as if guided by an invisible hand, they proceed to give those profits back through a series of inexplicable decisions that bear no resemblance to their usual trading. They violated rules they had followed for weeks. They took trades in conditions they knew to avoid. They sized positions in ways that defied their risk management protocols. And when the dust settles and they have returned to break even or worse, they feel a strange sense of relief, a normalization, as if the universe has been set right again. This is not coincidence. This is the unconscious mind restoring equilibrium, ensuring that your external circumstances do not deviate too far from your internal identity. If you unconsciously believe that people like you do not become wealthy, that success in trading is for others, but not for you, that you are fundamentally flawed in some way that precludes consistent profitability, then your unconscious mind will author sabotage with the precision of a master strategist, and it will do so while your conscious mind watches in confusion, unable to understand why you keep defeating yourself. The mechanisms through which this identity-based sabotage operates are varied and sophisticated. One of the most powerful is what psychologists call the upper limit problem, the tendency to unconsciously create crises or problems when things are going too well, when you are approaching a level of success that exceeds what your self-concept deems appropriate for someone like you. A trader experiencing this might find themselves suddenly unable to follow their process during a winning streak. They might discover new and creative ways to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. They might experience mysterious technical issues, sudden illnesses, or dramatic personal crises that conveniently occur just as they are on the verge of a breakthrough. The conscious mind attributes these to bad luck or external circumstances, but the pattern, when examined honestly, reveals an unconscious orchestration, a psychological immune system that attacks success as if it were a foreign invader threatening the integrity of your identity. Another manifestation of identity-based sabotage is what we might call the familiarity principle. Human beings have a powerful drive toward the familiar, even when the familiar is painful, even when the familiar is limiting. There is a strange comfort in struggle if struggle is what you have always known. There is a perverse security in failure if failure has been your consistent companion. This is why traders who grow up in households where money was scarce, where financial struggle was the norm, where there was perhaps even an unspoken moral superiority attributed to being poor or middle class, often find themselves unable to hold on to profits. It is not that they lack skill. It is not that they do not understand the markets. It is that success, wealth, financial abundance feel foreign to their nervous system, feel like a betrayal of their origins, feel like they are becoming someone they do not recognize. And so the unconscious mind, in its twisted loyalty to the familiar, engineers a return to the struggling state that feels like home, and it does so through a series of trading decisions that would appear irrational to any outside observer, but that make perfect sense when understood as a homeostatic mechanism, maintaining identity consistency. Fear plays a central role in self-sabotage, but not in the way most traders understand it. The obvious fear is the fear of loss, the fear of being wrong, the fear of depleting your account. These fears are acknowledged, discussed, analyzed in every trading psychology book ever written. But there is another fear that operates in the shadows. A fear that is rarely named because naming it requires a level of self-honesty that borders on the brutal. It is the fear of success. The fear of what your life would look like if trading actually worked for you. The fear of the responsibility that comes with wealth. The fear of separation from your peer group, from your family, from the identity you have worn like armor your entire life. The fear that if you succeed, you will be exposed as a fraud, that people will expect things from you that you cannot deliver, that you will have no excuse for mediocrity in other areas of your life. The fear that success will reveal you are not who you thought you were, and that revelation will require you to reconstruct your entire understanding of yourself. This fear is so uncomfortable, so threatening to the coherence of your identity, That your unconscious mind will choose the familiar pain of failure over the unknown terror of success, and it will sabotage your trading to protect you from having to confront these deeper fears. The solution to self-sabotage, if we can even call it a solution, is not another technique or strategy or mental tool. It is not affirmations or visualization or positive thinking, though these may have their place in a comprehensive approach. The solution is awareness, but awareness of a particular kind. It is the willingness to observe yourself with scientific detachment, to become curious rather than judgmental about your self-defeating patterns, to investigate the moments of sabotage not with shame, but with genuine inquiry. What were you feeling in the seconds before you moved that stop-loss? What thought preceded the revenge trade? What internal state made overtrading feel necessary rather than optional? And beneath these surface-level questions lies the deeper work. What do you unconsciously believe about yourself? What identity are you protecting by ensuring you do not succeed too much? What would it mean about you if trading actually worked consistently? What relationships might change? What responsibilities would you have to accept? What version of yourself would you have to leave behind? This kind of inquiry is uncomfortable because it exposes the ways in which you are complicit in your own suffering, the ways in which part of you has been choosing this outcome all along. But discomfort is the price of transformation. Self-sabotage persists in darkness, in the realm of the unconscious, in the territory you refuse to examine. The moment you bring it into the light of awareness, the moment you observe it without judgment, naming it clearly when it appears, something shifts. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually, incrementally, you begin to loosen its grip. You create space between stimulus and response, between the urge to sabotage and the execution of sabotage. You start to catch yourself mid-violation. And though you may complete the violation anyway, the awareness itself is progress. Over time, with consistent observation, you catch yourself earlier in the process, and eventually, you catch yourself before the process begins. And in that space of awareness, you have choice. And choice is the antidote to compulsion. The path forward requires you to become intimate with your shadow, with the parts of yourself you have disowned or denied, with the beliefs you hold about yourself that you have never questioned. It requires you to examine the possibility that your trading results are not primarily a function of your technical skills or your understanding of markets, but a direct reflection of your relationship with yourself, with success, with money, with worthiness. This is humbling work. It strips away the comfortable fiction that if you just had a better strategy or more capital or different market conditions, everything would be fine. It forces you to confront the reality that you are both the problem and the solution, both the saboteur and the savior, and that until you address the psychological architecture that generates self-defeating behavior, no strategy will save you, no mentor will fix you, no amount of education will liberate you from the prison of your own unconscious programming. But here is the redemptive truth. Awareness is curative. Observation is transformative, and the patterns that have controlled you for years can be dissolved not through force or willpower, but through the patient, compassionate light of sustained attention. The dark side of trading psychology only retains its power as long as it remains in darkness, and you hold the switch.